Hi, Allie.
Hi.
Thanks for being here so last minute.
Of course, of course. Been a
So
crazy week, so
I can't even, I mean, it feels like this happened months ago, but it was like 5 days
right.
ago.
Right. So yeah,
So
February 18th, right? So
yeah. And what are we, 24th? So it was 6 days
yeah,
ago, last
yeah.
Tuesday. So tell me what happened, what got our community kind of excited, but also kind of like slow your roll, people. Here's what's really going on. Let's get into it.
Right. So President Trump signed an executive order down in Mar-a-Lago. And essentially, I think the big confusion about it has been what does that mean, right? Like, what is an executive order? What does it do? I've seen posts saying, oh, he's expanded access to IVF, or and that's not what this does, right? So, all the executive order does is that he has directed and I will pull up his exact position so I don't get
Thank
it
you.
wrong. But he is asking the assistant um, to the president of the domestic policy. Let me see, I'm pulling it right now. Yeah, assistant to the president for domestic policy. I was right. All right.
Good
So
job.
making sure I didn't get it all, it's a long title. So,
Yes.
and yeah, he's asking this individual, who's actually, his last name is Haley. First name is Vince. I was listening to Rebecca Flick say she went and Googled him. I did the exact same thing. Like this came out and I'm Googling, who is this person? Does he have any connection to IVF? He has four kids and a wife. And I just, you always wonder, do they have a personal story about it or do they
Right.
know anybody? But that's kind of what I went and also Googled him quite a bit, which now is harder to do because we were six
Sure.
days out and everything you Google on him pulls up, the executive order. But yeah, so he was just, President Trump is asking him to give a list of policy recommendations on protecting IVF access and then reducing those out of pocket costs and health plans. So right now we're not sure what's going to happen, right? And he said within 90 days, so we're in this 90-day window. It's within 90 days, so we don't know if it's going to happen on the 90th day. Is it going to happen on the 45th day? And we also don't know what is this person going to say. Are they going to say, hey, I did my research and we should provide insurance coverage to veterans? Or are they going to come out and say we should be looking at private healthcare? Or are they going to come out and say, this should only be available for this group or that group, which I think is a big concern a lot of people have,
Hmm.
because it doesn't give really any identifications of who should be protected. And that's always been a big concern of our community, right?
Right.
Um, are you protecting everyone that needs IVF for family building? Is there going to be certain individuals who are protected and not others? Or are you going to limit its usage? So,
Okay, so and just to break this down even further, because people in our community get this pretty well because we talk about it all the time. But
right.
so this is, I think people got excited because what they thought he was saying is, oh my God, he's going to find a way to get insurance coverage for IVF. That's
Right.
like, right, that's what everyone
Right.
thinks this said.
Right.
And that is like, even if that is what his intention was, which it definitely isn't, as we're discovering right now, but it's kind of impossible to do because there is no blanket rule for insurance coverage, which is the whole part of the whole
Right.
problem for IVF. And what about how does this affect like states who
Mm-hmm.
don't necessarily believe in IVF because of religious beliefs, because they believe that embryos are children? Would they get some kind, like, can they get
Right.
coverage?
Right. And that's where we know that this administration is very big on pushing things back to the states, right? Putting the states in control. President Trump says that a lot.
Mhm.
And we have a lot of states that don't provide that coverage for individuals or don't require it. Very few states do. And we've always wanted that. I mean, I think that's been the big push for several of us is we want that coverage for everybody, right? We want
Mhm.
it for our veterans. We want it for state by state individuals. We don't want it to be depend on where you live or where you work, whether you can have assistance with paying for IVF. I guess part of this was really good in the fact that, and I tried to be very positive,
You
when I read it
did.
too. I think because I felt like I have had really good discussions over the last 6 days with people who had no idea that insurance didn't cover IVF, which I feel
Right.
like I scream from the rooftops, but I guess sometimes you forget that not everybody knows that, right?
Right.
Like they know very little things. And I think one of the issues that we've always had too is we want it to be a bipartisan issue, right? We've always wanted both sides to come together in some way. And we've had a really difficult time doing that. And so I think for some of us, it was looking at this going, okay, at least there's a statement. Hopefully, maybe this pushes sides to come together in some way. The big question mark, though, is how does that come together, right? And like you're
Right.
saying, will it come together? And if it's pushed to the states, we have very, Republican heavy states and very Democratic heavy state or Democrat heavy states. And so we don't know what those individuals are going to do. We don't know what that means, or if it's going to be very selective for who gets access and that kind of thing. That's always been a worry. Like even in my positive post that I was trying to put out there on Instagram, I think my community there is very fertility like it's a lot of people have been through it, so they kind of understood it. I posted it on TikTok, and my followers there are not quite so fertility, and it led to this entire, I like a whole fight between, what's this going to mean? And this is never going to happen and everything. So I think right now everybody's just kind of looking at it going, okay, what's going to happen? Where can we do it? And I think that's where I was trying to just be positive. And I think speaking out is so important right now because of those individuals who, like I said, it led to great discussions this week of no, there's not insurance coverage in a lot of states. No, there's not. And people even were like, I had no idea it was $12,000 to $25,000, which was specifically in the executive order. And so that was a huge, people at least were looking at that going, oh my gosh, I had
Which,
no
by
idea
the
it
way,
was so
that's like
expensive.
a best case scenario is
Right.
12 to fit
Right.
25. I'm like
Right.
25, I hit like within 3 seconds and then had 6 more years to go, you know?
Right. Right. But I think some people didn't even realize it was that expensive. So just it has led to some positive discussions. And I think maybe it's allowed some people to open up a little bit. So that's been my kind of positive take on it. But yeah, there's so many more question marks than there are answers from this. And so I think that really worries people everywhere, right? And especially
Right.
state by state. I mean, already state by state, we were seeing worries after, what happened in Alabama. So we've all been looking at that going, okay, now what's going to happen in each state?
Exactly.
So having more power to the states would be, I think everyone's just concerned about what that would mean.
Right. And I very clearly want to say you are a fertility law expert, not necessarily a health insurance expert, but the thing about mandating coverage is again, it's not black and white. So, for example, I think about Massachusetts is a state that was one of the first to mandate IVF coverage, but do you know, like, what are some of the bureaucratic things that come with that? Because in our head, we're like, oh my God, it gets covered. That's so much easier. But in
Mm-hmm.
some cases, it's harder because then you have to like wait for insurance approvals.
Right.
If we have some kind of federal mandate for coverage, it might slow things down theoretically,
Right.
right?
Right. I think there's a lot of things that they make you do to be able to get coverage for things, right? For example, with anything really, they have to show a certain thing. So one of the things people have talked about is will they require a year of trying, right? And what does
Oh,
that
this
mean
is
for
my
some
pet
people?
peeve. Yeah.
Right. So, I had an ovulatory issue. It was very obvious very early that was
Mhm.
not going to work for me. If I had tried for a year, then that would have, I would have lost a year, which is very detrimental when you're trying to conceive and, you're trying to um, have embryos and things like that. And especially for the LGBTQ community, that becomes a huge problem, right? What does trying for a year mean for that? And what does trying for a year mean for someone who's going about this on their own and wants to, have a child through IVF on their own? What is that going to mean? And what will the insurance company define that as, right? You just don't know what each insurance company is going to do. Are they also going to put limitations on it, like age limitations? There's just things that happen. All kinds of prerequisites or what's the word I'm looking for? Like when you like what's the thing I'm looking for where I'm trying to think right now when they don't want to provide access to people based on pre-existing conditions. That's what I'm trying to
Pre-existing
say. Sorry,
conditions.
pre-existing
Right.
conditions. So
Right.
let's say you've been through cancer treatment and you've had things removed. Are they going to say that is pre-existing?
Right.
We do not want to cover that. We just don't know. I mean, these insurance companies are able to write a lot of different things and they have a lot of power and they have a lot of for example, like my insurance is amazing insurance, but there was a specific carve out for fertility treatments. I mean,
Hmm.
black and white. There
Same.
was no, yeah, like it was for everything else. And then it was very specific in there. And even trying to get just little things covered, blood tests and ultrasounds and things like that. And they would specifically say, is this fertility related? And, we can't lie, right? We're not going to lie to
Right.
insurance. But yeah, it quickly was, nope, we're not paying for that. Nope, we're not
Yep.
paying for that. And so those are the things that you look at and go, okay, if they're going to say you should provide access to care, what does that mean? What are these insurance companies going to do? And yeah, will they only provide it for a certain age group, which would be terrifying also.
Which, by
And
the
that's
way, like just for reference, I'm thinking in Germany, for example, I know it's much more covered. But once you hit 45, you're not allowed to pursue covered treatment anymore.
Really?
And in some ways that makes sense because it's like we're just going to keep paying and paying because it might take forever at that age. And that's the unfortunate reality. But also, who's to say, like, what if you just didn't want kids and then all of a sudden you decided you do and now it's too late?
Right.
Who's to decide what too late is?
Or if you need a surrogate, like if you
Right.
need, a surrogacy will be a whole other area of this. Is that treatment, how will that be covered? Will the surrogate have to apply for insurance coverage? Will you have to apply for insurance coverage on behalf of, I wouldn't think they wouldn't be an insured under your policy. So how would that work? Right. And so
Right.
that just would be a whole other area of just how do you get that? And for, male couples, like what would their options be? Right. Would they
Right.
also be excluded again? So just becomes one of those things where you're just not sure what this all means. And it just makes people really worried. And I think it gives a lot of pause, which is why, yeah, we want to make sure that because the hope is there'll be directives and then it will be discussed and they'll try to pass. I mean, for the most part, hopefully just protecting IVF access. We've been wanting that for some time.
Right.
And they've said, oh, there is no limitations to IVF access. But I think this at least points to maybe there is, right? I mean, it may not be whether it's insurance or not, but the argument has been no, there's nothing out there limiting IVF, right? That was kind of why the Right to IVF Act didn't go through. Was a lot of people said there aren't limitations, or there is no
Right.
issue with access. And it was, this at least does say let's look at recommendations for protecting IVF access, which I think is positive because yeah, we've all been saying, well, we just want to make sure it's protected. We want to make sure it's still there. What that means, still don't know, but at least that part of it is a little bit is a somewhat of a positive angle because yeah, we have not heard that as much from both sides. So at least that portion of it, I feel like we've been begging for. So I'm hoping
Right.
that at least there's something maybe there. I don't know. Like I said, what does that mean? Who's it for? Who's access? I don't know. But
Right.
the hope is to look at some of that stuff for
And the
everybody.
bottom line is that the order is basically go do research and come back to me and tell me what our possibilities could be.
Right.
And
And
we
then
don't know
hopefully,
if that's going to be from the lens of a political party, right? If he's going to come back and say, well, in the most prohibitive states, this is the best we can do, so that's what we should go with. Or
mm,
you look at a state where it's like, or insurance company where it's like, okay, well, in this scenario, you get $75,000 and you can spend it however you want. That's the way we should go. Like, we have no idea what's going to be. What do you
right.
think the best case scenario is that he comes back with?
Right. So, I mean, of course, we want to protect IVF for and everybody for family building, right? That would be number one. I think the thing though is that we have to remember too is even if this individual comes back and provides this, it still has to pass through, right? So you still have to
Right.
get so it's not so easy as if he says, "Yes, IVF should be we should protect access." Period. That sounds great. Or this is how we should do that. We still have to get it through, which means, that's where I was telling people really to speak out because at least maybe we've got some ability to get this as a bipartisan issue if it comes to be. So, but yeah, access for everybody, for their family building, also for insurance, having insurance coverage for everybody for family building. Also, I think, for if they need fertility treatments, and I don't think that should have the parameters on that is going to be tough because I don't want parameters on it because I think I want the access for everybody. But the truth of the matter is to get insurance. Insurance just really doesn't give blanketed care treatments to anything, really.
Hmm.
I mean, even if you want, for a lot of us for insurance, even if we want to get, like I don't know, like something small, you have to go to your general practitioner. They have to look at it, then say, okay, here's who I recommend. Then you go to a specialist. And a lot of times for fertility treatments, it's going to be a specialist, right? So
Hmm.
you've got to go through original parameters to get to even a specialist.
Right.
And then what if they don't cover all the specialists and you only have certain people who are like in your network, that may almost limit who you can go to, right?
Right. Well, and that even goes into the embryo thing of can insurance then dictate what you do with remaining embryos? Because
Right.
that is a huge part of the debate currently, because people who believe that life starts when an embryo is created will not allow IVF because what do you do with extra embryos? You can discard them, you can destroy them, you can donate them to science, which they are adamantly against. Could insurance theoretically stipulate what to do with remaining embryos?
I mean, they could, I don't know. What's hard with embryos to me is I've always said that the embryos are the property of the individual, right? So that's because that's what the case law says that's out there. When you have divorces and things like that, that's really where the case law comes from for embryos. So it's tough because I always argue those are those individuals' embryos. But that being said, We contract a lot of things has changed. I mean, I see all the time contracts for people. I don't even realize that they've given away the rights to their embryos or what they've allowed to have happen. So insurance companies might be trying to control some of that stuff, especially ones who maybe don't want to provide fertility coverage, but they're only willing to do it under these limited circumstances, or if they can control it in some sort of way. Or depending on, you just don't know who are their who's on their board, who are their stockholders, that kind of stuff. Do they have individuals who are going to feel very strongly about, you need something to happen with these embryos, so that they're going to try to put that in there? I think it But yeah, I think the argument would be these are theirs. But yeah, we just don't know. I mean, this is a kind of unprecedented territory right now. There's only a few carriers, who are not, they're kind of outside insurance carriers. Even, I mean, some of them provide it, but it's just they haven't really done anything with the embryos. I just don't know what that would mean for the future if they feel like that's a way to keep individuals happy, right? That they don't want that pushback, right? Like if they're told, hey, you should provide coverage, and then they don't want individuals from the outside looking at them going, you're doing this or that, or you're,
Right.
yeah, like killing babies, that kind of thing. I hate that saying that, but you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
just trying to make sure that they're doing right, and that they're the people who, feed into their business are willing to be okay with what they're, the coverage they're providing. So I would hope that would still remain, that the embryos would still be the individuals. But we are just, I mean, honestly, like lately, I feel like I can't see the future. I wish I could
Right.
see the future, but I have seen more things happen in the last couple of years than I ever would have thought would happen on some of this stuff. So I don't know, but yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing is making sure that IVF is protected, right? It doesn't go away because carriers are provided. I mean, providers are scared to do IVF at all. And then, having some sort of coverage would even help. I think there's even a start there, right? Is we want coverage for everybody in some way, because we just haven't had it for so long. We've been begging for it. I mean, some sort of coverage. So
Yeah.
if we can start somewhere, I think that's a good start. I just don't know. Like you said, it's one of those things, I think, where people are saying, we don't, is this too good to be true, right? Like, what are the issues going to be? And if we're saying, yes, provide access, provide coverage, what is that going to mean to, this administration, to these insurance providers? And then are we going to look at it and go, oh no, this is not
Right.
what we wanted, right? And so
Right.
yeah, so I think we're all just sitting back, not really sure. I mean,
Right. I think
yeah,
there's two camps like that either think the executive order is BS and that it's for show and it's going to come back and be like, well, we investigated it and we can't do anything. And then there's other people like I'm more scared that it's going to enforce things that aren't currently enforced, that are currently up to the decision of the state or the individual. And
mhm,
now it's an opportunity to be more controlled by government instead of less. So that's my biggest fear. And I will say, like, my silver lining, if there is one, is that it is much more in the zeitgeist of the world right now.
mhm,
And, you know, for his election, he did say, I think everybody should have IVF. And then all of his, pawns were like, oh, we think so too. Everybody should have the chance to have babies. So hopefully they have to
right,
actually be accountable for saying that now.
right.
And they can't just
Yeah.
pull it away. But like that's really the only positives I see at this moment.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's just because there's so much unknown. But like you said, I do think we have felt like it's been such a one side says yes, one side says no. And then it was kind of like, oh no, like you said, we're starting to see some over here going, oh, okay, yes, I agree, whatever. I'm in Florida. Rick Scott was saying, his daughter was going through IVF. He wants IVF to be there. And I kind of started saying, like, okay, how do we make this happen? How do we do the next steps? I think we all kind of want that. I guess in my heart of hearts, I just hope whatever this person recommends, whatever is there, that they speak with people who know IVF, because I feel like that's always something that's been missing when these discussions are had, and you listen to things and you go, wow, I'm not sure you know how IVF works, or wow, I'm not sure you know how
Right.
this happens for, individuals and how it works. And like you're saying, it's not a certain age, or it's not a certain, you've tried for a year
Right.
and this and that. That's not how it all
Or
works.
you have
And
to do X amount of IUIs before you can do IVF, where
right,
like for some people, IUI isn't going to work, and we know that, and they literally still have to pay for them and go put their body through it just to get to the IVF point. Drives me
right.
insane.
Right. That's what I think is so scary is, okay, please talk to people who know this. And when you're saying it's up to the states and the individual right now, and also the doctors get a lot of say, to help guide their patients. And I know from personal experience dealing with other areas of medicine, how hard it got to get to be able to do things when insurance got involved sometimes,
Yeah.
right? Because
Yes.
so it's
That's
it's
the
a double-edged
thing.
sword. You're like, yes, there's coverage, but also I want to be able to do this and this. So yeah, so I think the concern is, yeah, please make, if you're going to push policies and you're going to push laws, make sure that they are understood in a context of how fertility works, how IVF works, how, the individuals that are using this for family building, to make sure everybody's protected and we're not leaving anybody out, or keeping anyone on the side that can't potentially meet these parameters if they set them in place to be able to use the coverage or to be able to still pursue it for family building. Because I do know that there's so many people that money is the issue and they can't utilize it. Or I would do them around if, or I would do that if. It's just always an if, because money is it's so expensive. And
Hmm.
so that's been a huge barrier. So at least that was a good thing to see, is, they're saying, okay, this is expensive. And like you said, that was a very small number.
Right.
But at least people were saying, oh my gosh, I did not realize this was mostly out of pocket. I did not realize how expensive it was. And that has led to some discussions that I've had with people that have never cared or
Right.
never not cared about IVF, but it just
It just
hasn't been on
hasn't
their
been on their
radar.
radar. Yeah.
Right. So at
Yeah.
least there's discussions being had. And it's like, okay, if we can keep those discussions going and have the, to try to push for some of the things that we want, I think that would help a lot. Especially, yeah, because I don't know. I don't know what the ideal is, I guess. Do you have like what you think ideal is? I don't even know.
I mean, in my ideal, it's everybody gets, $75,000 to spend however they want. And it's up to them to decide what to do with it. And that includes medications, acupuncture, all the things, like fertility coaching, therapy, all the things we
Yeah.
need. And like from someone that's gone through it, we know we need all of those things. Like that's my dream scenario. I have
Right.
very low expectation that that's what it's going to be.
Right.
Um,
Which would be
but
awesome.
it would be amazing. And by the way, $75,000 for me personally wouldn't have even covered it, but it would have made a huge dent.
Right.
And for some people, it
Right.
will cover all of it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's so complex. And I feel like
Yeah.
I'm going to make you say now, yes, that when it comes back in 90 days, we come back and dissect what he came back with.
Right. I know. I know. And that's, I mean, I think I put out there too that, in 90 days, it's like, okay, we need to talk about this for the 90 days. Cause right now it's out. I feel like you said 6 days flew by. I feel like the discussions I had in the beginning kind of have gone by the wayside, which we can't do anything right now. It's all up to this individual. We're just kind of waiting on him. But I feel like when those 90 days hits, whatever they say, we then have to speak out again, right? And start making
Right.
sure and lifting our voices and saying, these are the stories of fertility. These are the stories of, because I think that puts, I still will always think that when you understand what it is, like actual individuals and people around you that have been through it and things like that, and there are the people who are actually impacted by this, it serves a different purpose, right? And so then you
Thousand
start to,
percent.
right, because right now you look at this and go, oh great, they're giving you access to care. Like, doesn't that,
Right.
are you so excited? Like,
Right. Like go have another one. Just sign up at the doctor. Just get it.
right, right, exactly. So it's, you're like, okay, hold on, let's have a discussion about this. Let me tell you how this all works and what that means and what we would like coverage to be. And like we said, we both aren't even sure what that would be 100%. But yeah, I think that those discussions will need to be had again in 90 days. And then hopefully it leads to, we'll have to reach out to, if they ask, for things to be passed and things like that, then it becomes a whole nother thing of,
Well, and you made a great point, which is that 90 days from February 18th is literally to the day, I think, Advocacy Day with Resolve.
it's 2 days
Um,
later. So
it's
it's
two
May
days
20th.
later. Okay,
Yeah.
so it's kind of like so it will be very interesting to see what happens when that information comes back and how the approach of Advocacy Day, which I talk about on the podcast a lot, and I'll give a little summary,
Mm-hmm.
but like how it will affect our scripts, our language, who we talk
Right.
to, how we talk to them. It'll be
Yeah.
very interesting.
Well, and I mean, I'm one of the on the board this year helping with Advocacy Day, and our push has really been about individuals, but this has kind of changed it, right? Because it's,
Yeah.
we don't know what's going to happen. And so trying to give people, yeah, the information, and the script is going to probably change just because how do we respond? But I've been trying to tell people this is why signing up for Advocacy Day is more important this year, I think, than it's not that it's always important, but just because of that 90-day window and the fact that we may be talking to individuals 2 days later, if he waits until the end to put this out there, and then going, okay, hey, so
Right.
executive order, this is what he said.
Right.
Let's talk about that. Let's say what that means. I'm this person. This is what I didn't have coverage or that kind of thing. And it's just going to lead to different discussions than we've ever had in the past. So yeah, I'm interested to see how it impacts Advocacy Day and kind of like what we say and how we push for it. But I think I'm hoping it leads to more people wanting to feeling rejuvenated, I think, because I think a lot of people felt a little defeated because they weren't sure what that was going to mean, right, when he made those promises. And we still don't know, but at least we've got the first movement towards it. And it's only February, 18th. It's only been in
Right.
office for a month or so. So at least we're talking about it.
You're right. That's a good way to look at it. And
I'm
I'm going to
trying.
see you back here in 90 days. We're going to rehash it.
Perfect.
Promise?
Sounds good. Yes,
Okay. Thank you
definitely.
so much for going through this with me. It's like so hard to dissect, and I feel like this is so helpful for people.
Good. Sounds great.
Talk soon.